The type of movement that it offers in game, in my opinion, I don't think that the game is balanced around that type of movement.
Trying to affect change on regular speed 180s and redirects and turns is that you would ideally you'd want to see a reduction in the severity that people can do it, and probably a reduction in the overall amount of people literally doing it, which would mean that it's now more skillful.
That is just crazy because they're also getting a reload in while they're doing that.
Yeah, if you can whip to an even more extreme degree the same movement the mouse and key can, and you have aim assist in close range, that's a sweet deal, man.
I think people actually don't think about this. Why do you think there's so many MK players in ALGS?
I think what you're really looking for here is this is what gets you what you want.
Scroll wheel tap string. All right, cool. I want you to explain whatever you need to say first, and then I'll talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So my main gripe or issue isn't so much with the position that tap strafing should be nerfed or should be removed. I think any of those things can be fine on their own. My issue is more so that I think your proposed solution doesn't really coincide with your intent, and there's some disparity there. Does that kind of make sense?
Okay, yes.
We'll get specifics for sure. Do you want to just quickly lay out for me and just kind of for the viewers what you think should be changed about tap strafing or how scroll wheel should function?
Okay, I don't think that scroll wheel should be a compatibility that should be viable. Like using macros in a sense to fling your character in drastic 180 movement directions. I don't think that should be allowed.
Okay.
I think standard tap strafing should be allowed, like momentum shifting. But I don't think people should be able to, for example, off a cannon, completely do a 180 and go the opposite direction 400 yards.
Right. Okay. Sick.
Or they want you to speak up if possible. I can turn you up as well.
Does this sound good?
I'll turn you up a little bit.
Okay.
So my main issue with scroll wheel strafing or macro strafing on controller is that it allows you to do things that are, there's two ways to put this. It allows you to do things that are just, one, completely not even accessible by people who don't use scroll wheel for keybind, or controller players that don't use macros, which is not even allowed to begin with in ALGS.
Right.
And then the other thing is the type of movement that it offers in game. In my opinion, I don't think that the game is balanced around that type of movement. I don't think that it ever will be. And I think that type of movement is not healthy for the actual competitive balance of the game because it allows people to do things to keep themselves alive where the other player can't really do much about it. For example, reload strafing, where you are scroll wheel strafing while reloading, so you're momentum shifting your character in midair, so you can dodge bullets while reloading. The whole point of the reload mechanic is to punish you for shooting your gun and having to reload while you're being shot at.
Right.
But also giving someone a dodge mechanic while doing that is fucking ridiculous.
Okay, sick. So before we get super into this, if at any point I say something that's not accurate in regards to your views or what you just said, definitely stop me and clear that up because I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying.
All right, cool. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I think to structure this, we should just run through different use case scenarios for tap strafing and talk about them in scroll wheel and manual, and we'll just kind of piecemeal it that way. So to start off, first one, high velocity tap strafing, 180 path grapples, jump pad, shenanigans, all that, right? So
yes.
When it comes to that, I think we're pretty in agreement that that's tap strafing at its strongest and is absolutely the part that needs to be tackled the most.
Yes.
So,
and an argument could even be made that those characters specifically could be the only ones allowed to do that.
Right. Oh, that's an idea as well. So if we're for now, let's just set aside normal wall bounce 180s or whatever, and let's just focus high velocity. If you and I are game balancers and we want to get rid of this, and the proposed solution that you have is we want to remove scroll wheel, there's a few different problems working against you here. Number one is that the main drawback of the macros, but the main drawback is that the design element drawback of jump pad, I think you would agree, is supposed to be that you've committed to this location. It's not like Wraith Portal where you can go back. You are now locked into this pad fight or padding to a building or whatever. But tap strafing is bad here because it undoes that intended design drawback. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So the issue with scroll wheel removal as a solution to this problem is that it's only going to shift jump padding from 180 degrees down to about 110 or 120 because you can still rip that manually. So it wouldn't be a full nerf in the way that I agree with you on this, that I would want it, right? The other problem is that while high velocity tap strafing is inherent to scroll wheel tap strafing is not inherently high velocity, and that gets into some accessibility issues that we'll probably get to soon. The other issue is that this does not fix. It's kind of a tiny fix for M and K in my opinion, but it also does not address controller tap strafing in any way. That would still be fully viable. So all this being said, if I say keyboard grace to you, does that mean anything to you?
No.
Okay, I'm gonna DM you a picture real quick. So these 4 values, these are basically lines of code. And this is the secret sauce, the Krabby Patty secret formula to Lurch and to why Apex feels so good. Now, the top value jump _ keyboard grace period max is the time window, and in-game it's set to 0.5 seconds, that you are allowed to make Lurch inputs to as many as you want. The solution, so nerfing scroll wheel here, removing scroll wheel to nerf high velocity tap strafes, I don't think is a very good solution. I think the better alternative is to base Lurch accessibility, these 4 values, based off your player velocity. So literally make this an if statement. If player velocity less than or equal to 600 units or something like that,
yes.
Then
do you think that they tried this? Because I know that they tried to fix tap strafing, or I don't like to call it tap strafe. I like to call it macro strafing or scroller strafing, because tap strafing is completely different.
Right.
But do you think that they tried to do this and then they didn't know how to do it or something? Because I know that they broke everything.
Right. So remember? I think they tried something else. I think they tried capping Lurch to a set static amount per jump period somewhere in here.
Okay.
I don't know. Now, obviously, we're talking about the source engine, which is.
Do you know how to do that type of shit, or are you just really knowledgeable about it?
No, I'm just pretty knowledgeable. And honestly, even if I had years of experience, I probably couldn't touch the level of knowledge that designers need to work in the source engine. This absolute cluster of a physics.
Yeah, I've heard. It's very clunky.
Yeah, so definitely easier said than done. If there's any devs in chat, I don't want to discredit your work. This is probably harder to do and implement. But I think.
And the one thing I do want to mention.
Yeah.
Is that a lot of the opinions I have are about things that I can't fully understand. One, because I'm not a fucking coder and shit. And 2, because I don't know exactly what goes on behind the scenes. Like when I mention things about the rank system, I don't know how many players are in Masters specifically or whatever. How many players are on a certain time of day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I bring up opinions and topics, it's about a problem that I see, and then I throw a solution into the mix that doesn't always necessarily mean it's 100% true. It's just kind of raising discussion or bringing a point of where I think that it could be changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally love that and about your whole persona, because you're the main voice of the high skilled player community within this game. And that's ultimately what I want to get out of this conversation, is to kind of maybe nudge you towards a more consistent take on this, or just more informed, right? If that makes sense. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So in the category of high velocity tap strafing, I think a better solution would be to base it off velocity of the player, because you would fully fix the issue instead of kind of fixing, because then you wouldn't manual or scroll. There's no movement, and it also fixes controller, and it doesn't impact players' ability to scroll wheel in other tap strafe situations, which we could get to next. So
I mean, I think also regardless, I think there's a world where you can't fix it 100% no matter what. Maybe cheaters will find a workaround, but it's a big difference between allowing hundreds of thousands of people of doing it and 1,000 people or whatever.
Right.
Limiting the mass use of it.
Well, that's also a point that we'll probably get to in the next bit when we talk about normal tap strafes, because skill check or mechanics required to perform, I think there's a little bit of misinformation about that in manual versus scroll wheel. Mm-hmm. So if we move to away from high velocity and just to normal 180 wall bounce tap strafes, right? That type of stuff. I'm guessing, and based off what you said in the beginning, you want that stuff gone as well, right? Reload 180s and wall bounce 360 no scopes.
Normal redirects I think are fine, but I think that drastic movement shifts are fucking ridiculous.
Okay. One sec.
I don't know if you ever watch Mac play, but he does this thing where he slides and he'll do a 180 scroll wheel strafe and then reload. So he can not only get full momentum shift, but also go opposite direction while reloading. So when he lands, he's ready to shoot.
Yes.
But you could say that that's a high skill component, but I think that just breaks the natural fighting system of the game, in my opinion.
Okay, so there's two things going on with that. One, first off, we'll just start off with the mechanics side of that, and then we can get into whether or not that's balanced, because I might have some. Because so far I'm not really like making personal statements, but we can like personally disagree on that one coming up. But
Okay.
I'm linking you to a doc right now, a Google Doc, with a couple of clips. Each of these clips is a 5-second bit of me doing various movement text manually with the key inputs blown up on screen so you can see. So like there's 180s, elite jumping where you hit a zip line and go around, 180 wall bounce into a backwards wall bounce over the same wall.
Okay.
The reason that I bring this up and want to show you this isn't just to flex on stream. No, it's to show that if you were to remove scroll wheel, much like the issue with high velocity, this is not going to impede players' ability to whip 180s or do zipline shenanigans or 180 wall bounces and whatnot. It will still. Now, some people say that this is going to raise the skill gap to force people to go back to doing it manual, and I'm going to be charitable to your side here. I could be suffering from selection bias, right? Because I myself am good at this stuff, and I surround myself with movement gods and whatnot. So we can all do this. I might be overestimating the average movement player's ability to execute these moves manually, but I don't think that I am. If we
I think that 110 degree no scroll wheel tap shift on an Octane pad is perfectly fine.
really,
Yeah. I don't
Right.
know. Did you think I disagreed with that?
yeah, I don't think you should be able to change your trajectory at all off pad. I think you should have to commit. Like you can have the normal amount of air acceleration, like that slight turn you get when you just hold
No,
the
I
shift key.
think that's completely fine.
Interesting. So why is that
Because
okay, but not 180?
you because you also have to remember that like let's say you're trying to go up to a 3-story building, giving the player an option to pad past the building and then turn around and lift themselves and go up from a different angle. I think that's like really good mechanics for Octane specifically. And I don't think that type of movement is game breaking. Like you can track these players. This type of movement is not as difficult difficult to track versus like a straight up scroll wheel 180. Like that type of shit is fucking crazy.
So I guess that's the next part
And,
of it. I don't.
and you,
Oh, you go
you
ahead.
also have to remember. You also have to remember with traditional tap strafing, you can't tap strafe off this pad backwards, but with scroll wheel you can.
Right. Hence where I was wanting to focus on a velocity nerf, because you also, as collateral damage, impact players' ability to bind scroll wheel and use it in other situations, which if we're going to touch movement in any way, I want to surgically remove only the overpowered element, and I would want to do that fully, right? And I use that like very deliberately, like surgically. And I guess balance-wise, like you just said that this is trackable, and I would argue the same thing for 180s, right? With the balance element being that you are not returning fire. I think it's I don't think it's that hard to track somebody that's ripping a 180 or is wall bouncing off and turning in the air and whatnot. And again, that's the why I think tap strafing at normal.
I think your headset just changed or something.
Oh, anyway, the reason that I think tap strafes at normal speed or off walls and whatnot are somewhat balanced gameplay wise is because in order to orient yourself in the air, that is tied to your camera movement, right? That's the reason that it's more overpowered on controllers, because you can do it independent of your camera and still return fire. So that being said, I don't think, and even JBeeb said this in his tap strafing tweet longer, that he doesn't think normal speed tap strafings are bad enough to quote like kill with fire immediately and whatnot. And I don't think that's what Respawn is super hard wanting to target nerf wise either. And if we
normal tap strafing is fine,
right, like at normal speeds
or like redirects. Well, the things like slide jump. I don't know. The thing is like slide jump, momentum shifting with scroll wheel, and also maybe even Raj strafe type shit. I don't know. Like I haven't really thought about that too much, but
that was gonna be the next thing I asked you, because if we'll just go with max 180 reload, right? I mean, I do that myself all the time. If we want to get rid of that, right, we'll just focus on how to get rid of this, right? If the position is manual tap strafes, or not manual tap strafes, 180 tap strafes going normal speed need to go, and we want to use scroll wheel removal to do it. And I with the dock being evidence, right? This can all still be done manually, and I don't think it's much more difficult or even more
Yeah.
difficult at all to execute this, because what goes in mechanically to executing a tap strafe right now is rolling scroll wheel in sync with a strafe key, right? To do what
Okay,
I'm
so
doing in these clips is literally just double tapping W and D.
in like 2 sentences, what do you think that Respawn should do right now about high momentum macro strafing and also including controller? What do you think they should do about controller on PC and controller on console?
In regards
Because
to, oh yeah, go ahead.
a, a large part of my argument actually revolves around trying to equalize the balance between controller and M&K. And I think that the only way you can truly start to develop that true balance is to hinder the movement of M&K, and also so it gives the ability to buff controller in a lot of different ways, and then take a actual look at aim assist,
Right.
specifically rotational aim assist.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you're going to have great discussions about that today. But the main thing I would focus on that's the most egregious is the high velocity. I would want them to work in the code somehow a velocity cap for lurch. Now,
Okay, real quick, chat. We're not talking about 50-50 equal. We're talking about bringing the power balance closer to each other. M controller right now is only good because you can one clip people for 200 consistently up close, and your consistency of damage up close will always be fucking busted because of aim assist. That's just fact. There's no other real reason to run controller over M&K. M&K is the superior input, and it's better in every other way overall. But in a very specific way, controller is better because it has that aim assist threshold up close, and that's why it's so powerful in pro play, for example, because you have a controller player that can run up to people and one clip them. But when you're talking about overall balance, you want to talk about why something is strong, and controller is only strong because of that specific reason. When what you would want to do is buff controller in a lot of other ways, and then bring that reason down. So you balance controller specifically, and then it brings the two inputs more in line with each other. Because right now M&K is a better input. Controller is not the better input. So I'm not trying to say that you need to nerf aim assist or whatever, or you know what I mean? It's about why things are strong. All right, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, absolutely. So to sum up, the quickest way that I would try to find that balance, and this is like kind of a radical change. Number one, high velocity cap. That way, no one is doing any crazy stuff out of a path grapple or any of that, right? Number
Yeah.
two, so that would kind of leave smaller tap strafes intact, which is whatever. This is the big one. I would uncap, but severely raise air acceleration. So give Horizon a new passive, buffer, soft landing, or whatever. But now everybody gets the ability to accelerate to a higher degree in the air, controller included, right? That would actually put movement in air positioning on exactly the same level between M&K and controller. That would be the quickest way. Now, obviously, it's a little probably too late in the game to do something like that, but that's
I definitely agree that
quickest
controller
way.
does need more movement capabilities like that.
Right.
Have you seen controller macro strafing through
Oh, yeah,
Steam?
absolutely.
That shit is more broken than M&K.
Absolutely, yep. Because they got
That
all
scroll
four
wheel-
directions independent of their
Yeah.
camera. I can't believe it.
All four directions, independent of their camera, and it's a macro that you can set to 1,000,000 inputs per second. That scroll wheel isn't even capable of doing. Like, people don't understand that movement on controller on PC is actually better than M&K most of the time. And the reason it's not so widespread is because all the people who argue are usually console controller players or controller players on PC that don't even realize that that's a thing.
Yeah. The next
that
12
shit
months is going to be crazy when they figure it out.
That shit is so broken that they literally had to ban it in ALGS. All right, check out the rest of the year. Thanks here.
Yeah.
Diagonal. And I do agree that if you touch like scroll wheel strafing, then it can nerf like a very large percentage of the fun that people have in Apex. But like what you're showing here is this redirect, right? Like this is a redirect that's possible through authentic tap strafing. This is not scroll wheel included, right?
Correct. Yeah, none of these are scroll wheel.
A lot of the stuff that you can do is you can also I don't know why it's like this, but the S key, the backup key, is actually stronger than forward input.
Mm-hmm.
Like a 180 redirect when you go around a corner is better if you go backwards and then do a 180 and face that direction. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I think that's because when you do a normal. Or hold on.
Let's say like you
Yeah,
have a building right here, right? This is a square. Let me show you. So you have a building right here, and you're the blue player, and you want to go around like this, right? When you get to the corner of the wall, if you face that direction and back, do your back key that way, and then do a 180 and face that direction, it's actually better than going around the corner with forward instead of just going straight around the corner with
Right.
W.
And I wonder if that has to do with the amount of time that you're using air acceleration. Because the low amount that it gives you does stack with giving it lurch.
Yeah. So like the thing is like this type of shit is way more skillful in my opinion because you not only do you have to face opposite direction but get a perfect 180 to go the direction that you want to go. Plus you don't really you're like blind partially.
That's the next part. So the two working elements to trying to affect change on regular speed 180s and redirects and turns is that you would ideally you'd want to see a reduction in the severity that people can do it, and probably a reduction in the overall amount of people literally doing it, which would mean that it's now more skillful. And I don't believe that removing scroll wheel is really going to achieve either of those things, because again, we're talking about forcing everyone to go from strafe key while scrolling to double tapping W and D or double tapping A and S, right, to make these same 180s. So
yeah.
what my fear is that this is what I was kind of talking about in the beginning about I think your intent is fine, but your proposed solution doesn't kind of fit with it. I think what you're really looking for here, this is what gets you what you want. You want a static cap on the amount of lurches that the player can input after a jump, like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that's what Respawn was trying to do or is working on right now. Remember when Control was first debuted and they had all the streamers playing?
Wait, tap strafe? What do you mean? I can't tap strafe? Oh my god, what happened to me?
And
Yes, they had that in there, yeah.
Yeah, and they couldn't tap
I
strafe.
thought that shit was amazing. I was so excited.
But I'm betting you could no longer do the same redirect that you just showed on stream under that system, or any of the stuff that is in the doc, obviously. But that's kind of the issue
it definitely didn't work. They did something wrong because they didn't implement it. So, or maybe it was just like their test run.
So really, the three schools of thought here are: if you just want high velocity stuff nerfed, we need to cap player velocity accessibility to lurch.
Yeah.
If we want,
that would also stop the macroing, right?
Yes, it would stop the macroing. I would put mouse and key and controller on the same level.
Would you agree that controller is the better input even overall, as long as that controller player does have that Steam macro system set in place?
Probably. In a pub setting, for sure. I don't know about comp. I don't have any comp experience. But, yeah, if you can whip to an even more extreme degree the same movement the mouse and key can, and you have aim assist in close range, that's the sweet deal, man. That is.
I actually think that comp would be like 90% controller players. And a large part of my argument of why there's so many MNK players, people actually don't think about this. Why do you think there's so many MNK players in ALGS?
It's because the only PC professional players that have existed were on MNK previously. There's not a popular controller shooter game. That's kind of the joke, right? That Apex is like the island of misfit toys for pros from Overwatch and other places.
ALGS is mechanics is one of the it's one of the lesser important things. Most of it is actually game knowledge, game sense. And for the first 2 years of competitive in this game, it was all MNK players because everyone came from Blackout on PC, which was MNK. They came from H1Z1 on PC, which was MNK. They came from Overwatch on PC, which was MNK. And they came from CSGO on PC, which was MNK. And then the only controller players at the beginning of the game was Snipedown, who came from, I guess, Halo. Was he playing Halo right when Apex started?
I think shortly
and
before.
Then Nicewig, I don't even know where the fuck Nicewig came from. And was there even any other controller pros?
No, I think those are the only two at Poland.
They were like the only two, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you have 2 years of of experience of these MNK players learning grind the game, becoming pro IGLs. Yeah, that's my take on all that.
Awesome.
All right, cool. So I mean I like all the shit that you gave me, all the info that you gave me on tap strafing and all that, and hopefully they can figure it out. I guess that's the best way to put it. Is hopefully they can figure out a way to equalize the movement between inputs and also reduce a lot of drastic scenarios. But I think you and I can both agree that we don't want it completely gone for sure, because then it would ruin a lot of fun in Apex, right?
Right, exactly. And the main hangup I have with adjusting keybind ability in any capacity is it's mostly, ultimately it's an accessibility argument, but like to be more specific about that, it's like keyboard as a platform, as an input, right? Because it's raw input by virtue of being raw input, it is incredibly player expressive, right? The amount of personality and ability that shines through the keyboard into the game space through the player is like incredible, right? You could probably show me anonymous. Like,
I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
As a temporary solution until they figure out how to do what you say they should do, which is what I've said in the past as well, do you think that they should limit the ability for scroll wheel to be bound to movement keybinds in game as a temporary solution until they can figure it out?
I don't think so.
Okay, and why do you think that they shouldn't do that? Very briefly.
Because it's ultimately what you've done is you've forced people to get used to a new keybind. That's ultimately what that would be, right? Because you'd see a sharp decrease in the amount of people tap strafing because now they can't choose scroll wheel, and then it would take like a week or two, the same way when you change your interact key, right? And then they would figure out how to double tap W and D or A and S, and then they'd be whipping all the same 180s.
Why is that a bad thing?
No, I don't think that's a bad thing. Oh wait, are you saying to switch?
Yeah, why is changing the keybind and having people switch, why is that a bad thing?
Yep. So here's why, and that's kind of what I was starting to get at just prior. It's accessibility, right? So mouse and keyboard being so incredibly player expressive as an input. Have you ever heard of Tox JQ, Quake player?
No.
Okay, so he's a Quake pro. This guy uses Z and X to strafe, V to shoot, left click to move forward, right click to move backwards. And he is one of the most cracked players of all time, right? As far as Quake goes.
I always hear about Quake players being weirdos with their keybinds and stuff.
Right. But he's only able to do that and have those binds through the platform of mouse and keyboard, given how accessible and how much freedom it offers the player, right? And that same level of, like I was kind of getting into, I think you could show me Apex mouse and key gameplay anonymously, and I could tell you which player it was. I could say that's Lyric, that's
So what does he have? What does he have on his mouse, by the way?
He has move forward on left click and move backwards on right click. So
and he shoots with his keyboard, right?
He shoots with his keyboard, yep. And he has the god tier tracking, right? So this amount of expression and accessibility, I think, is a core pillar to why so many people find mouse and key incredibly attractive as an input. Now, if you come to me and say, Dapper, I want to put up some sort of barrier as to how people use their M&K, I'm going to be like, we need a damn good reason to change anything, right? Because I'm very much want to err on the side
what he's doing on paper makes complete sense, because he's just moving all of his functionality, like movement / turning his screen, onto his right hand on his mouse, and doing all his abilities and shooting on his left hand. So like splitting the actions actually makes complete sense on paper.
Right. Absolutely.
Because this is another thing that I've talked about quite a bit in the past is something that I do. I kind of want to show this. I have my keyboard, but I'll just show this real quick.
Yeah.
All right. So something that I do is I don't know if a lot of people do this or not, but I actually have my crouch keybind here and my jump keybind here, right? And then I also do, how do I explain this? My train of thought. And the reason you do this is because when you want to slide jump, you only use your thumb, right?
Yep.
Because you can slide and then jump. That's another topic. I think that Apex should have a dedicated slide button that's separate from crouch, so you can prevent dead slides more often. Which I don't know why they haven't done that, but I think it's because of the controller. But also on top of this, when I think that the keyboard for gaming is actually kind of like terrible functionality. I don't know how to like fully fix this solution, but for example, when you use your WASD to move around corners, if you want to go to the right, let's say you're jumping around in the corner to the right, you have to hit W and D, right? And you have to turn your mouse. But if you want to reload while you're doing that action, you have to take your index finger off of this key and hit that. So you can't do it at the same time. It's the same thing with like your ultimate. So let's say you're going around a corner and you want to go left and you want to hit your ult on Q. You can't go around the corner and also use your ult, because if you take your left finger off A, you're going to hit Q, or your W, your index, and hit Q, then you're going to stop one of these functions. You're either going to stop forward or you're going to stop left. This is the reason why I take my ult button. I don't use ult on my Q. I put it on my mouse. Okay. So I can have full directional capability when I use my abilities. So my reload and my ultimate and my tactical are all on my mouse. I don't put them on my keyboard.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so my hang up is that if somebody wants to, and I guess I could maybe use you for an example. You use scroll wheel for switch weapons, right? Just as or do you still
no, no, I swapped it to side mouse button. Actually, I did bind scroll wheel strafing, and I use it minimally.
Okay, sick. But in the same way that you changed around your keybinds to be able to hit your abilities better, if somebody, or like somebody wants to do a weird setup like that Quake player, if somebody wants to set up scroll wheel in a way that's accessible to them, whether that be movement or grenade cycling or whatever, we need to have an insanely solid reason to restrict players from being able to do that. And so far, I don't think that has been demonstrated. As far as to remove scroll wheel, if that makes sense, and at least that there's better ways that you could surgically target that issue outside of scroll wheel. But
another thing here is let me see if I can get a better picture. Something a little bit separate. I'm just ranting or going on a tangent about my keybinds now.
Yeah, you're good.
Well, that picture is not good. Who knew it'd be so hard to find a picture of a mouse and keyboard? Already? Good. All right. So another thing that I do is what exactly is it? Okay, not something I do. Another thing that I see other people do, which is what you just explained, is traditionally most people, they have their left click for their shoot and their right click for their aim, right? Mm-hmm. This goes into what you were talking about. What a lot of people do, not a lot of people do, but what I've seen some people do is they put their shoot button on like C and their zoom button on like control or something. So I think a big reason why they do this is because of pressure sensitivity on the mouse. Like when you're aiming at someone, like say this is the target and you want to move your mouse and aim to them, right? Mm-hmm. You always want your hand on your mouse to remain exactly the same. It's like you're wearing a glove, right?
Right.
But when you have your trigger finger on left click, you have to click your index finger down, which changes the pressure on your mouse, which won't really matter that much. It's really not that big of a deal. But if you do want to change like your grip, for example, or if you want to keep your grip the same, then you shouldn't have your trigger, your fire button on your mouse. And it works the same for side mouse buttons. For example, let's say your slide button. So like, let's say you have a slide button here. Let's say when you're fighting someone, you're going around the corner sliding. Your thumb position to hit that slide button would have to move to your button, which means that you would be gripping your mouse differently. That makes sense.
Yep.
This is why you don't want to have your slide on your mouse. You want it to be on your keyboard always. That's not necessarily for you, but that's for like people in chat.
No, just like anecdotally, last week I actually tried out shooting with left alt, and I've been doing that, and I've already noticed a difference in my tracking. I don't know if I'll stick with it, but
there was a player for Team Liquid he played for Blackout Team Liquid, and then he was on Liquid for Apex for a little bit. His name is Callie. I don't know if you remember him or not.
Maybe.
Let's see, Liquid Callie. So his name is Callie. He was on Apex Team Liquid for a while. What he did was he put his shoot button on C, and he would put his zoom button on his keyboard. And when he first told me that, I was like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. I'm not going to do that because that would take forever to get used to. But it's really fucking good if you can get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because ideally, you want to be able to like hold your mouse the same always and never have to move your fingers.
Right.
In moments where you have to aim.
You mentioned
literally
RAS
toggle aim,
strafing
kind
earlier. Do you think RAS strafing is okay, or does that need a kind of a fixie fix in your opinion?
I think you could do RAS strafing without scroll wheel, right?
Yes.
You can do it without scroll wheel. I think that with scroll wheel, it's more drastic in a sense. I think you can do it in more drastic ways. I don't think it's like game breaking, but I think that when they do fix momentum shifting, that I don't know if that type of thing should stay.
Because that's one thing where even with like that build they had
very
during
low
control,
movement, but
I don't know if that can be nerfed in a way that would not also impact redirects. Because
it's just like the thing is when someone jumps in the air, right? And they have a momentum of a direction, you should be able to predict and know that momentum that they're going in. And when they just do something as easy as scrolling their wheel to change their momentum so you miss your bullets, that feels cheap and inorganic, does it not?
So there's two things going on here.
As an MK player, because
yes,
controller just fucking follows them.
Obviously. But so the one thing is the just roll your scroll wheel, because again, I think it's just as easy to do these things, or like 90%, 110% as easy to do the same things manually. The other part is what do you think about this argument? Do you think that AD strafing is okay because, or that it requires a lot of skill, right, to press like A and D mechanically, not too much, right?
It's just the core mechanic of FPS games,
right? But in how people use that, I mean, it's by design as far as FPS goes, unpredictable, right? You don't know when someone is going to crouch, or someone is going to jump, or someone is going to go left,
but
right.
There's character movements that coincide with when that shit is done, and AD is less drastic than momentum shifting in the air. When you jump, you're supposed to get punished for jumping. That's kind of like the point.
Right. So the trade-off that I said earlier was that when you do jump, so here's your AD strafing on the ground and you can return fire. It's unpredictable, but you can return fire. Now you jump and you want to tap strafe or do the Mac reload thing. The from a balancing perspective, the trade-off that happens now is that you cannot return fire because you have to use your camera, sacrifice your camera in order to manipulate your air position, right? That's why I don't
think you always have to do that though. I think you can just hold a directional key, or like as you hit it, you scroll with a directional key, and your camera, like you can keep your crosshair on the person.
With RAS strafing, but that doesn't require scroll wheel. Is kind of what I'm getting at here.
Oh, true. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So
then that goes into the topic of being able to reload while you're momentum shifting.
Right.
You're getting an action that should be punishable while mixing it in with a dodge mechanic. That doesn't really take that much skill, to be honest, but
you can also reload and dodge while AD strafing, right? And crouch spam or jump.
Yes, but that's predictable movement, though. Like when someone slide jumps in a direction and they jump in the air in that direction and they're reloading, you should be able to predict and see that movement. But when they can just instantly 180 scroll wheel a different direction that you don't predict because they scrolled their wheel in a very fast movement, not just crouching back and forth like this, that is just crazy because they're also getting a reload in while they're doing that.
Right. I can buy the reload part of that, yeah.
So you go to shoot them, then you're ready for them to keep going this way. They momentum shift backwards and reload while you're trying to track them missing your bullets, and then they land and they can shoot you.
Right.
That shit feels cheap. I don't think that should be a thing, to be honest.
So if it right, and that's a totally fine position to have. I don't think that there's anything inherently wrong with that position. That what I'm trying to kind of pull you towards is, instead of saying remove scroll wheel, what you're really looking, the fix you're really looking for that is a hard cap on lurches per jump.
Yeah.
That's
Now the argument is like what that hard cap should be.
Right.
Because slide jumping is not really a fast movement, but when you have shit like that, it's like, you know, I mean, you got to talk about it. You got to think about like, where should that cap be?
But yeah, what should you be able to do? And I could even sit down and explore that. What actions should you be able to do while airborne?
And then also, characters like Horizon and Pathfinder, should we keep the momentum shifting in? Because that would be fucking sick.
Right.
Imagine they found a way to like nerf like momentum shifting, so you couldn't do it off like cannons and ads and shit like that. But they kept it on Pathfinder and kept it on Horizon.
Yeah, you could probably make it per character, right? Like if I'm blocking this out, in like a code way, if player not Pathfinder or Horizon and velocity above 600, don't input lurches.
All right, I'm gonna try and move on to another topic. Take some questions from chat.
No, absolutely, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks for all the info. You definitely know more about that shit than I do, so it's definitely cool to get on the same page with things.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I appreciate the conversation.
All right, thanks for stopping by.
Yep. See ya.